NHS Digital. Interoperability is the program within the health service looking to do things like shared care records between the primary care, the GPs, and the hospital trusts. And it's into things like open APIs and generally sharing huge amounts of data across the NHS for the benefits of patients. I've been doing benefits management for a number of years now, more than I care to remember. I started out doing it working for BT 20 years ago with Cranfield University in their original research into benefits management and why IT projects fail. And I've been sort of dabbling in it for the past 20 years with BT, with public sector customers, and for the past 12 years or so in and around the NHS on health informatics projects. Past couple of years I've been doing electronic patient record in hospitals, and the example I'm going to use today is also based on a modest-sized district general hospital and one of their IT projects. So I've been asked to do managing benefits in the long term. It says after the dust has settled. The project team's clearing their desks and they're all departing to pastures new, so what happens next? You may be disappointed in that I don't have guaranteed answers today or a perfect case study for you to copy, but maybe a couple of ideas here should prove useful to you. I'd welcome suggestions back from yourself because I've got an awful lot of things to learn here myself. So I'll start with an example of how I've seen it done, on the basis that if you learn from mistakes, it's always best to learn from other people's. So here's an example: Tech Fund Drugs Cabinet. Sorry. The Tech Fund is a national enterprise. A bit of sort of national money is available, pot of national money, and trusts bid for it. The Drugs Cabinet, the Intelligent Drugs Cabinet, is basically what it sounds like. It's a cabinet, something about the size of a wardrobe, full of lots and lots of little locked drawers, which can only be accessed by sort of an online system. So rather than having a cupboard at the end of the ward full of drugs for people, what you've got is a cupboard that is controlled by computer. It only opens a specific drawer that you need to take that set of drugs out of. So it's benefits in the way of patient safety and stock control and all that sort of thing. So it's a good thing to have. So the Tech Fund was a national IT investment exercise, and hospital trusts and other bits of the NHS had to bid for sort of matched funding out of a central pot. Although people knew that it existed and it was up and coming, the details weren't known until shortly before the deadline. So nobody can be sort of well prepared to put in a bid that had been well thought out. It was very much a short window to bid for funds, and it tended to be a case of, what's that project that we can't afford? Quick, let's knock up a business case and see if somebody will chip in some money to do it. So the specific case that I'm dealing with, who I will call Bruddersford, as sort of an archetypal Yorkshire hospital to protect the guilty. They wanted to bid for their drugs cabinet, so they put the pitch to the approvals committee. The Tech Fund has an approvals committee that reads all these bids for funds. They had to promise a value for money ratio. There's a certain hurdle rate that the project had to pass to get funding, and it's the 2.4 to 1 value for money ratio. In effect, it's a matter of, for every pound that you spend, you must get £2.40's worth of benefits back from it. There's a rather awkward calculation around that, in that cash releasing benefits, the bills that you don't get anymore, are knocked off the costs. So the benefits you're actually considering are the non-cash releasing stuff, the productivity gains converted to money, and the societal benefits. What's it saving your patients? Again, converted to money. And as I say, the hurdle rate is £2.40 for every pound that you spend. You've then got a short window in which to spend it, because it's all done by the end of the financial year. And by the time all the bids have been in and assessed and approved and the money is released, you're likely to have something like less than 6 months to actually go out and spend the cash before the end of the financial year. Having had a very short window to get the bid in and get the money to spend, the reporting is done over a much longer period. What they wanted was reporting for the duration of the program and probably beyond. So in effect they were looking for a 10-year reporting period, which was reported back on a quarterly basis using a standard template spreadsheet. The assurance is done by a small national team. So the central team from the Tech Fund, they had something like half a dozen people across the entire country looking at, I think, over 200 different projects. So they did the initial assurance to say, were the initial benefits reasonable and okay, and did they meet the 2.4 to 1? They also did the ongoing assurance and sort of checking on the reports that were coming back to them. I said a small team with limited influence over the trusts that had got the money. Obviously, there's very limited sanctions that they could apply in that, you know, you'd already got the money. They could hardly take it back off you. Maybe all they could do is sort of threaten to turn you down at next year's bidding for Tech Fund money. The other disadvantage of this is that within the trust executive, very few people were interested. You know, the bid had been put in, the money had been approved, everybody was back to doing their day jobs. So there was very little interest in monitoring the benefits and making sure that things were tabbed on and carried on with. So this is where I got involved in it. This is a benefits dependency network, just to sort of summarize what the project was about. On the left-hand side, the Intelligent Drugs Cabinet, its system features and capability. So it has things like real-time stock reporting in there. Links to allergy status, and the EPMA is the electronic prescriptions management. So that's the online system for running it. On the right-hand side of the diagram, that's what the trust wanted to achieve. That's its strategic objectives. And it's sort of tied into performance matters and patients experiencing safe care. This was done after the event because I only discovered the project sometime after it was up and, well, not exactly up and running, but in progress. What happened was one of these central team people collared me at a conference and said, "You're doing benefits at Brotherford, what's happening with the drugs cabinets?" And it was the first I'd heard of it, so as the benefits manager there, I had to go away and find out what they've been doing. The original business case didn't have this benefits dependency network in it. It was very much a traditional business case, and it wasn't so detailed, nor was it quite so logical. One of the benefits within it was Intelligent Drugs Cabinets will save us 667 hours per ward, which is £100,000 saving. And that kind of suggests that somebody come up with the idea of £100,000 saving first and then work back to the number of hours productivity as we're going to gain on the ward to get there. So the spreadsheet, this is what the benefits were tracked on. What we have on here is the actual award value. So the Tech Fund had awarded something like £350,000. The costs to the trust were also added on an annual basis, so that was broken down by sort of years running costs and implementation costs. The value for money that comes underneath that is sort of the benefits category, increased productivity and cost savings and other quantifiable benefits. There were no quantifiable benefits in the original business case. And I think what I'm going to have to do is break out of this. I do have the spreadsheet separate, so if you'll excuse me while I just break out of the PowerPoint. Right, that's probably a lot easier to see. So as we can see, the award value 350,000, costs, and the costs have been discounted using net present value. The stuff in yellow was from the original submission. The stuff below it was the forecast benefits of the revised submission, and that's the stuff that I'm going to look at in the next click of the spreadsheet. Beneath all this is the actual benefits, which were not recorded at that point. Original value for money ratio 4.4 to 1. Later on it became 2.39, slightly below the 2.4 target. So that was what we're supposed to be reporting on a quarterly basis. As I said, the actual project team weren't desperately interested in this. So it was a matter of sort of chasing it up with them and the central team to try and come up with some better benefits. These are the individual benefits. This is simply a benefits register. So those of you familiar with benefits management, you'd have a benefit profile for each line of the spreadsheet. So what we have is a benefit owner, benefit title, pharmacist, time released, details, and so on. All those profiles are just simply aggregated into the spreadsheet. And if I just, all right, the values. So the 667 hours is still there, so this is not a perfect benefit. I hadn't managed to fix it at that point and make it much more accurate. The other benefits I got were things to do with patient experience and safety. So having got away from the productivity side of things, patient safety, we were looking to reduce the number of serious incidents. Because the drugs are controlled, the prescription and issuing of drugs on the wards is much more tightly controlled using a cabinet that only unlocks when specific requests have been made. Fewer incidents. Some of the benefits from that were along the lines of, in effect, hospital productivity. So if we say increase patient safety, it reduced the average length of stay by 2 days. The estimate was that if you cause somebody harm by giving them the wrong drugs, on average they have to spend an extra 2 days in hospital. That's more a benefit to the trust itself rather than benefit to the patient. Likewise, the management of complaints is again the amount of time used to manage those complaints rather than what the patient gets. So what we wanted to do was also look at what was the cost of harm to the patients themselves. And if I can find the right one for that one. Right. We put in a societal cost. The estimates behind that were based on work done by the Health and Safety Executive. They do a lot of work on risk assessment and on sort of what are the costs of an accident in a factory, so that you can then assess how much you should spend on risk mitigation to prevent those accidents. It's along the lines of a minor injury is worth £400, a significant injury sort of 200,000, and death is I think 1.4 million or thereabouts. Obviously these are not real money costs. These are something to show you the scale of the problem, the scale of the benefit. And so we came up with an average cost of harm to the patient of about £5,500. Multiply that by the number of serious incidents we hope to reduce, gave us a target value. The other one that we did was on experience. Quality adjusted life years are something that we're still dabbling with and haven't come up with a firm way of quantifying them and putting them into financial terms. A quality adjusted life year is in effect 1 year of perfect health and well-being. The average person scores something like 0.8 of a QALY, because life is not perfect. If you're in serious pain and discomfort, then obviously your QALY goes down, and if it's 0, you're dead. In fact, there is a possibility that you could end up with a fate worse than death and have a quality of life that is less than 0. But that one's getting a bit sort of philosophical. What we did with this was take some examples from the Department of Health, who measured patient experience for a good experience, and they reckon that sort of customer satisfaction sort of things are worth 5% of a quality for 10 days. In effect, half a quality adjusted life day. So DH value an entire quality adjusted life year at £60,000. That's what they think members of the public price their own quality of life. So taking that, half a adjusted day is worth £82. So again, that's just simply thrown in to get us some financial comparisons, some almost proxies that can then go into that value for money ratio. So those were the benefits that we selected, and as you'll see, there are only a few of them. I think it's sort of 6 or 7 there. The other sort of the final benefit, the only sort of hard cash releasing benefit that was identified in the project was that nurses didn't lose the keys to the old drugs cupboards, and the trust had a bill of something like £6,000 per year to the locksmiths to replace the locks and keys. This is a trivial benefit. It's unbelievably sad, but at one point this looked like being the major reason why we were doing this, because this was the one benefit that we could track and have any hope of actually realizing. Anyway, if I go back to the presentation. All right. So that's how it was. How could it be? We've improved how we manage the benefits of projects over time. Old projects simply ended when the kit was switched on and everybody went home and assumed it was going to work. At the present stage, if we're using things like Prince2, then we have business change managers, and the projects end when the transition has been made into business as usual, and it's a smooth transition and the kit is now in use. When it comes to agile projects, well, they seem to go on forever in incremental improvements, and I'm still working on what are the incremental benefits of those. But agile benefits management is going to have to be a subject for another day. With transition, we occasionally plan by having the project board to become a service board, and so we've got a bunch of people who will run it in future, but we miss the detail of how they'll actually manage the service in the long run. The diagram on the right-hand side of the slide comes from the APMG Managing Benefits Manual. They have a 5-stage process to managing benefits. What I've done is add these sort of iterative loops within loops. What you have is the identify and quantify, so that's selecting the appropriate and significant benefits up front. The bit in the little box, the sort of documents that come out of this are the benefits dependency network and narrative. Valuing and appraising is then when we turn out what benefits are worthwhile and what make the best use of our scarce resources. So that's quantifying the stuff and then prioritizing it. Obviously you have to plan to deliver your benefits, you have to realize the benefits, and then you have to review. And while we're realizing the benefits, we're doing benefits reports. The so far so good, the outcomes being measured so far, the performance management. After the situation's been up and running for a while, it's had time to bed in, then we can do a formal post-project review, post-implementation review, and with that, the purpose is to input back into a culture of continuous improvement. It's making use of the lessons that we learn, either to tweak the benefits within this project and slightly improve them, or possibly looking back on what we've seen from this project to kick off a brand new project with a whole set of benefits of its own. So what we need is a clean handover on this move to business as usual. The project creates a new service that's fit for purpose, and its performance limits and its capabilities are known and agreed by the business that takes it on. So hopefully we've got a business change manager or a user who sees the value in the system that they're getting. They and the business are then responsible for running the new service at its agreed performance, which means we need a better alternative than 10 years worth of just tracking on a spreadsheet. So what we're looking at, I suppose, is using existing measures wherever possible and appropriate, and using the assurance process. I have the view that benefits assurance should take an equal priority to the project's technical quality assurance. In fact, there's a strong argument that it really ought to be higher. Benefits are what you're doing the project for, so we ought to spend more time making sure we're delivering them rather than the kit switches on when you want it to and the menus drop down in the right order. So when designing the measurement work package, we need to look for some commonality and seek to avoid unnecessary work by bundling the measures that use the same KPIs. We've got to keep it cheap. We can't turn this into an industry. And as you can see from the diagram, benefits management is an iterative process, so we have to use what we learn. As I said, the realised stage is the so far so good stuff that keeps you on track, and the review is what can we do next. And hopefully, thank you. Right, what are the hurdles to this though? Why isn't it easy? Well, the duration of benefits is the first problem. Duration of benefit is less concrete than sort of the depreciation of assets. When we buy an asset, we have a rough idea how long it's going to last, and the accountants sort of knock off price over time, which is in effect putting money aside to replace old kit. We know it's going to wear out. The problem with benefits is that they don't wear out, and you can't really depreciate them. You can't turn around and say that this drugs cabinet worked perfectly well in its first year, but in its second year it only works Mondays to Fridays, and in its third year it works Mondays to Wednesdays. It doesn't happen like that. They retain the value until the benefit is supplanted or the system is supplanted by something better. So what we tend to do is make the duration of the contract the duration of the benefits. If you bought a piece of kit, then we'll manage the benefits until you buy the next piece of kit, or the life of the service that we're going to run, if it's got a lifetime. When things go on forever, it's a much more arbitrary and subjective idea as to when we stop measuring them. Now, you could cynically say that a benefit is a benefit while the owner says it is. It gets measured for as long as somebody with sufficient clout wants it to be measured. So this 10-year reporting back into the tech fund may not necessarily last for 10 years because the tech fund will change, it will move on, different ideas will come to pass, different initiatives will set up, and chances are somebody will pull the plug after a couple of years and people will stop reporting the benefits. That might be appropriate. But from an audit point of view, you have to remind the people with the clout what their responsibilities are and why they ought to stay interested. And this is why the trust board ought to stay interested in tracking the benefits of this, because they promised that they would do so, and they want to make sure that they are actually getting sufficient return on investment for the people that have given them the money, the tech funds that have given them the money. I suppose it brings me that there are two dumb questions for every project of who it's really for and what do they actually want. When it's an internally funded project, you can hand it neatly over to the business to do the business as usual stuff. Once you've got external stakeholders, then we have to worry about giving the customer what they want. In a commercial world, it's relatively easy. You just pay back the bank loan or hand over the dividend. But in the public sector, because we haven't got this sort of market force to it, your external investor, in this case the tech fund, wants some evidence that they've been spending their public money wisely. And that's why we end up tracking benefits as an industry, not necessarily as well as we could do. So who's it really for? In this case, you suddenly discover that a project that you thought was for your hospital and rewarded benefits for their patients is not necessarily for that. There is always this risk that you're doing it for the wrong people for the wrong reasons. I haven't got any answers on that, it's just something to consider. So the time and effort, the cost of measurement has to be outweighed by the potential loss if it didn't happen. There's no point in putting an awful lot of effort and time and cost into counting beans if nobody's really interested. If your new system is a smooth running machine and it's just going to work and produce its widgets and just run without any sort of errors or problems, then you don't have to put in a lot of effort into measuring its benefits. It probably comes to the stage where you just simply assume everything's going to be okay. Having tested it for a little while, so far so good, on we go. However, if you're in a system where if you're not watching it, people will just sort of turn off and go home, then you've got to put in the effort to monitor the benefits. It's the audit principle around it to make sure that we're keeping track of what's necessary. Which just brings me to sort of quality control and is it a tick box exercise? If it is, then the quality is going to be doubtful. The bosses have lost interest and the reports have just been produced for one side and filed on the other and become an unnecessary expense. Which I suppose brings me to the carrots and the sticks. How do we keep the right people interested? The tracking ought to provide the input to future decisions. So what intrinsic and what concrete motivations can we apply to keep tracking and management relevant and useful? How do we make sure that people are motivated to be interested in this? And when it comes to things like central funding, it's all right having a memorandum of understanding. It looks impressive, but it's not much use if it's not enforced. The problem being that if you apply sanctions, the sanctions are likely to hurt the wrong people. If the people with the central money find the authority that they've lent it to, then it's the citizens who are going to feel the cuts. So we need to do something along finding the way to price up the tracking exercise in the business case so that time and effort are justified with a worthwhile return on investment of their own. So tracking is going to be part of the project and program costs because it justifies what it's going to do. It's performance management, making use of the information that you get, and that's easier said than done. Okay, we've got plenty of time left, so this is possibly a way of doing it. I must confess it's a bit more hypothetical than I'd like because I haven't really used this to any great depth myself, so I can't say yeah it's guaranteed to work. But something that comes out of Cranfield method is using a benefits measurement plan, and the plan records and reports on your progress towards benefits realisation. Right. It says, in general terms, a benefits-driven approach focuses on realising and tracking the progress of the benefits realised rather than the project activity. And you can't claim a benefit if there's no proof that it's occurred. You need a baseline, you need something that shows that change is happening. The measurement profile, very similar to a benefit profile in that it has sort of the basic things about an identifier, an owner, and predicted value and stuff. But it goes into a little bit more depth about the outcomes measures and the benefits measures. A lot of the benefits that we're going to face won't happen for some time. When you're doing things about changing, well, basically changing society, improving health outcomes in general, public health things, in local authority terms, improving your citizens' lifespan, education, housing, all that sort of stuff. The benefits could take 2, 3, 5 years. So you're going to need some sort of lead indicators. The outcomes, the stuff that is happening during the project or program. Are they lead indicators? Yes, no. These are your evidence of benefit to come. So we have to do things like, what's the trigger event? What starts the measurement? The collection and the collection frequency and time scale are there because we have to appreciate things like the burden of collection. Working in NHS Digital, a lot of NHS Digital's work within the English NHS is the acquisition of information. It's getting people to produce, to deliver the stats on what they're doing, and then as a head office department aggregating them and producing reports. One of the major things we have to do is make sure that we don't overburden the NHS by throwing lots and lots of requests at them time and time again. We have to make sure that the collection is appropriate and doesn't cost too much in terms of time and effort and sweat. On the data storage bit, again, you're collecting data, and we're into the realms of Data Protection Act and stuff like that. So are we collecting data for the purpose which it was already stated? We can't just collect big bucket loads of data in the hope that it will come in useful someday. That's the sort of thing that has to go into a measurement profile. The appropriate measures bit, this is sort of performance management in general, which I think is applicable to long-term tracking within benefits management. And it comes from a guy called Andy Neely, who was a Cranfield lecturer. I'm not sure if he's still there now, because this book is now somewhat old. What we have is, what's an appropriate measure? Is it relevant? Are you actually measuring something that is relevant to the benefit that we're talking about? Does it have causality? Is the thing that you're measuring actually caused by the change that you've made? And the cost of measurement I've already discussed. Is it an efficient use of money to actually make the collection? Neely's reasons for measurement, this is why you do it in the first place, are to check position, communicate position, confirm priorities, and compel progress. In my view, the confirm priorities bit is the stronger of the four as far as benefits management is concerned. It's the upfront selection of benefits, which are the right benefits to do the project for. So the measurement confirms your priorities, say, yeah, we're doing it for the right reasons and we're on track. Checking position, are we on track? Compelling progress brings us back to the motivation. It's sort of, yes, we're doing well, let's do more, or we're not doing as well as we thought we were, something must be done to fix it. And obviously the communication part of this, there are an awful lot of stakeholders out there who are not directly involved and impacted, but can have a significant impact on your project. Now the political aspects, the press aspects of national or indeed sort of local projects. So we have to have something that communicates that says, yeah, look, we've got a good story to tell here. We are doing the right things. So far, so good. And the roles of measurement from Neely are comply, check, and challenge. Again, are we complying? Are we producing the information that we're obliged to produce? Back to the tech fund and the quarterly reporting. People promise to do it, therefore they have to do it. They comply. It's checking stuff internally, and it's also challenging. It's back to, are we doing things in the right way? If we're not, it needs fixing. Are there things we could do better? Can we improve on it? The challenge helps you to test your strategies to make sure that the benefits you thought you were getting, you're actually getting as well. So potential for further benefits, the last sort of the review bit on that 5-stage loop. Benefits management is an iterative process, and you can step back. We do, well, I'm saying we, certainly the projects I've worked on, there is a tendency that you go away for a workshop, you decide what you're going to do, and that's it. You set it in tablets of stone, and nobody ever goes back to revisit the original decision. This is Brexit on a minor scale. It's permissible to go back. If you're not getting the benefits you thought you were, go back and work out why not. If the plan doesn't meet reality, revise the plan. You're allowed to go back, so long as you add value by doing that. The post-project review, I say, after a suitable bedding in period, once it's been up and running for a while, that way it's had time for people to use it properly and to see what benefits they can get, what benefits they have been getting. So it asks the questions about what effects have we got now, what's the change to the previous situation. Yes, we have made a change, it's a good one, terrific. Are we getting the benefits? What further benefits can we now get? A bit of tweaking just to improve it, add some incremental benefits, the stuff that people didn't think about up front, but they see coming through the new system as they get used to it. And what further actions are necessary to get the potential benefits? Is it a matter of sort of tweaking a few business processes, or do we have the makings of a brand new project or program because we've identified an opportunity that's too big to miss? And so the output of the review is the input to the next round of benefits identification. It's like lessons learned. You have to learn the lessons. You can't just put the report on a shelf. And that, I think, covers the topic. So if I close that down, and David, if you can then sort of take back control of the presentation, and then we can take questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, David. I would just like to, if you have any questions, then please, as stated at the start, then pop them in the question box. Also, what we've done with previous webinars, if there's any resources, etc., that David's mentioned throughout the course of his presentation, then please list these in the question box, and we will chase these up following the live session and send them out in the follow-up email along with the slides and the recording. Just a question that came in throughout when you were showing your spreadsheet earlier on, it's just around what discount, it's from Jonathan Hudd from Somerset County Council, what discount rate did you use and why?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 3.5%, which is, I think comes from the Treasury's Green Book as being the average net present value discount rate to use for government projects. I'm not sure whether they're changing. The Green Book's getting rewritten at the moment, so whether that will get changed in light of the way inflation's been running for the past few years or not, I don't know, because I suspect the original number is a good sort of 10-15 years old. The other one that we could use, the DH do a discount on the qualies, but I think they do that at 1.5%. But again, I'm guessing on that one, so I may be wrong.
Okay. Thanks, David. Just a question from myself. Just while public services are kind of been shifting towards a focus on, in some cases, of prevention sort of initiatives that might, as you said earlier on, might take 5-10 years before you start to see benefits. Do you think that there needs to be any kind of change within the setup of public sector or what would you suggest in terms of the governance models for managing benefits going forward?
Ooh. Right. That's a tricky one. Okay, I think probably, to be honest, most of what you can do is just simply do the risk mitigation bit up front of forecasting what the benefits are likely to be, and look for proxies and outcomes that do the so far so good. The difficulty with that, I suppose, is getting your SROs and your program sponsors to accept that what you're reporting to them is a step on the way to benefits. You have to build up the story that says, if we do this, then it is reasonable that we will get these benefits in 5 years' time, and get them to accept the bit that you're measuring now. I don't think I've got a complete answer on that one, because again, going back from previous experience, once you start putting pound signs on them, no matter how much you say this is not real money, it is sort of a cash equivalent, or the pound sign is just simply there to show the scale of the benefit, and it won't happen for 5 years. There's always somebody comes back and says, okay, I want the thing sort of annualized, put on the graph. You promised me £5 million in 5 years' time. Where's my £1 million a year starting this year? And no amount of going back to the business case and saying it was never real money, you were never promised this, seems to stop them from asking it. Yeah. Which is a waffly answer and not one that is very constructive, I'm afraid, David. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thanks very much, David. Just while we're waiting for a few more questions coming in, I was just wondering if you'd like to share the benefits management network session that you are doing at Napier next month.
Yeah, good point. Yes. Okay. There's a chap at Napier University, a guy called Pritam Chitta. He's a lecturer on their MSc in project and program management. He's interested in benefits management, has been for a couple of years now. He ran a afternoon course about 18 months ago on benefits management, had quite a few people turn up to it. It was a good day. And what he wants to do is expand on that and turn it into a regular benefits management network, possibly with quarterly meetings. The first one is happening on the 16th of November, and anybody's very welcome to get there. If you can get to Edinburgh, please turn up. There are details of the thing somewhere within Knowledge Hub on the, oh Lord, I can't remember exactly where, but brilliant stuff. Yeah, you've got it for me. Thank you.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. So there's the joining instructions. If anybody's interested, please contact Pritam and book a place on the thing. The first event, I'm going to be there with Lady Ruth Evans, who helps me out with the Yorkshire Benefits Management Network. We've been running a similar thing for a number of years. Ours comes out the NHS. It was something I used to run for the Strategic Health Authority, but when they closed down, we kept it running with the university. And again, it's just a question of people getting together, sharing best practice, a couple of presentations, bit of group work. And one of the good things about it is you get to meet other people who are doing benefits, have similar issues, similar problems, and it's nice to know that you're not alone. So just for the sheer networking, it's worth coming to. And I have great hopes for Pritam's event. I think it's going to be a good day.
It's excellent, David. It's something that we've actually shared on the Change Managers Network as well, so if anyone is a member of the group, then they can find it in the events page, and from there you've got registration links, etc. as well. Doesn't seem to be any more questions for the session today, so just if you have any more, then please fill them in. I'm just very quickly going to go over the Change Managers Network as usual. We've been running since January last year, and membership is free for any public sector organisation. We run several of these webinars and training events, etc. going forward throughout the year, so if you want to keep updated with what's going on, then please feel free to join the Knowledge Hub group if you're not a member already. Following this session, I will be gathering up the recording of today's session along with slides and a couple of resources that have come through in the questions box, and we'll also be posting details of our webinar next week, which is a week today actually at 10 o'clock, which is on open data driving social impact. So we'll include a registration link to that in the follow-up email as well. I'd like to thank David for giving up his time to present to us today. It was fascinating presentation for me. And if you have any questions going forward, then please feel free to direct them to myself or to David. Following the webinar, the software will take you directly to a survey. We'd really appreciate if you could fill this out and help us work on how we can improve this webinar series going forward and what really works best for you. So I'd like to thank you all for attending the session today, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll hopefully see you at a webinar soon. Thank you.